Hi and welcome back. This is second episode in our series on neoplasia. In the first episode or first part, we saw the definition of neoplasia, the classification, characteristics, and staging of neoplasia. In this second part, we will be seeing the carcinogenesis, carcinogens, clinical aspects, and lab diagnosis of neoplasia. Okay, let me take you into the subject. First, let's discuss the carcinogenesis or pathogenesis of cancer. How a normal cell is transformed to a cancerous cell, the mechanism by which it is transformed. Here we will see certain characteristics. The first one is monoclonality. I explained this already in the last video. There is strong evidence that most cancers develop from a single clone or a single progeny or a single parent cell. This is referred to monoclonality. The second thing is genetic theory of cancer. It is said that cancer is a result of abnormalities in genetic composition, which can be either inherited or induced, that is mutation. Here, this genetic abnormality or mutation is in certain genes which regulate the normal cell growth. There are 4 regulatory genes which regulate the normal cell growth, aging or apoptosis, and it is mutation in these genes which cause cancer. And this is the basics of genetic theory of cancer. So what are these 4 regulatory genes? The first one is proto-oncogenes or growth promoting genes. Activation of these proto-oncogenes or growth promoting genes can be a cause of cancer. The second one is anti-oncogenes. Anti-oncogenes or growth inhibiting genes. The inactivation of these anti-oncogenes or growth inhibiting genes can also lead to cancer. The third one is apoptosis regulatory genes. What is apoptosis? We already saw in our cell injury series itself. You can revise that now. So this apoptosis is regulated by certain genes called apoptosis regulatory genes, and abnormality in this apoptosis regulatory genes can also be a cause of cancer. And the last one is DNA repair genes. There are certain genes which bring or which repair any slight damage to the DNA, and failure of this DNA repair genes can also lead to cancer. We will see each one of these regulatory genes and their relationship to cancer in a little bit more detail. First, we will see the relationship of proto-oncogenes or growth promoting genes. Mutated form of proto-oncogenes is called oncogenes, and this promotes growth and thereby becomes a reason for cancer. And this mutation can be due to point mutation, which is nothing but alteration of a single base in the DNA, or it can be due to chromosomal translocation, which is transfer of a portion of one chromosome carrying the proto-oncogene to another chromosome. The example is Philadelphia chromosome. Or it can be even due to gene amplification, which is nothing but increasing the number of copies of DNA sequence in a proto-oncogene. So now, how are these oncogenes related to cancer? Most of these oncogenes code for one of these 5 things. Number 1 is growth factor. Growth factors are small polypeptides which are elaborated by certain cells, and they normally act on another cell. That is, their action is paracrine. It is prepared by one cell and it acts on another cell and causes growth of it. But here in tumor, what happens? The tumor cells themselves produce growth factors and they respond to that growth factor as well. That is, they acquire self-sufficiency. They produce growth factors necessary for themselves. Examples of growth factors include platelet-derived growth factor, transforming growth factor, etc. These oncogenes encode for receptors of growth factors also. Receptors are transmembrane proteins present on the cell surface on which these growth factors act, or on which these growth factors bind, and they start a series of actions. But here in tumor, in mutated form, these growth factor receptors stimulate cell proliferation even without bonding to the growth factor. That is, they start stimulating growth proliferation even without binding to the growth factor, or even without the presence of growth factor. Example of growth factor receptors include EGF receptor, c-KIT receptor, etc. The third factor for which the oncogenes code is cytoplasmic signal transduction proteins. Now these growth factors come and they bind to the growth factor receptors, and there are some proteins in the cytoplasm which transduce signal from these growth factor receptors which are present on the cell surface to the nucleus and activate intracellular growth signaling pathways. So these are messengers from growth factor receptors to the nucleus. Examples include mutated RAS gene, ABL-BCR hybrid gene, etc. The next factor for which the oncogenes code is nuclear transcription factors. Once the signal transduction proteins bring the signal from growth factor receptors to the nucleus, what happens in the nucleus? These nuclear transcription factors start DNA transcription and induce the cell to enter into the S or synthesis phase. Cell cycle and its different phases we already discussed in our healing chapter, I think. So our nuclear transcription factors, what they do, they start DNA transcription and induce the cell to move to the S phase or synthesis phase, thereby starting the cell division. The most important among nuclear transcription factor is MYCG. The last factor in this list is cell cycle regulatory proteins. The cell cycle regulatory proteins, usually called cyclins, are cyclically synthesized during different phases of cell cycle and they regulate it. So mutation in the genes coding for these cell cycle regulatory proteins can also lead to cancer. Examples: mutated form of cyclin D, mutated form of cyclin E, etc. Coming to the next regulatory gene, that is anti-oncogene. These anti-oncogenes normally have an inhibitory effect to cell growth. The inactivation of anti-oncogene, which happens in tumor, leads to loss of this inhibitory effect. Normally, these anti-oncogenes induce the cell to enter the G0 or resting phase. When they are inactivated, this inhibitory effect is removed. The major anti-oncogenes include RB gene, P53 gene, BRCA1 and 2 genes, which are implicated in breast cancer, etc. The next regulatory gene is apoptosis regulatory gene. Usually, the apoptosis is regulated by certain genes, for example, BCL2 gene or CD95 receptor gene. CD95 receptor is termed as apoptosis receptor or death receptor. Any abnormality in such genes can also lead to development of tumor. The next one in this regulatory group is DNA repair genes. Usually in a normal cell during complex mitosis, some DNA damage occurs, and these minor DNA damages are detected and repaired before the completion of mitosis. It is not carried on to the next cycle. This is done by this DNA repair genes, the example of which includes P53 gene. But when failure of this DNA repair mechanism happens, it leads to the defects being carried on to the next generation, which can result in cancer. Here we must also talk about a very interesting thing, that is the telomeres and the telomerase enzyme. Telomere is a protective sequence at each end of the chromosome, and after each mitosis, there is progressive shortening of this telomere. That is, with each successive mitosis, there is shortening of this telomere, and this shortening continues progressively. This is kind of a marker of the age. And there is something else called telomerase, which is an enzyme which helps in or causes a repair of these damaged ends. That is, a repair of these telomeres. It helps in maintaining the normal length of this telomere. And this telomerase is normally active in stem cells, but it is not active in somatic cells. The upregulation of this telomerase enzyme, which usually happens in malignancies, maintains the length of the telomere and helps the cancerous cell to avoid aging. So with this upregulated telomerase, the cancerous cell avoids aging, it becomes immortal. The interesting part is, you can take it this way, the shortening of telomere is the sign of aging, and this telomerase prevents the shortening or maintains the length of the telomere, and if that is done, the cell acquires immortality. It does not age. So this telomerase is a kind of elixir which can provide us immortality. So speaking in terms of science fiction, if we could devise or research a drug which could mimic this telomerase or mimic the action of this telomerase, we can achieve the immortality which is talked about in our ancient mythologies. Okay, so I'm talking about science fiction now. Anyways, yesterday's science fiction is today's reality. Maybe today's science fiction can become tomorrow's reality. Who knows? We could regulate this telomerase with scientific advancement, and maybe we could achieve immortality. Okay, let's not digress from the subject. The point here is, in cancerous cells, this telomerase is upregulated so that the cancerous cells achieve immortality. We will leave that section there and we will move on to our next section, that is carcinogens. Carcinogenesis is the mechanism by which cancer occurs, and carcinogens are the causative agents which cause that cancer. These causative agents or carcinogens are grouped under three categories: chemical carcinogens, physical carcinogens, and biological carcinogens. First, let's see chemical carcinogenesis. The process by which chemicals cause cancer is divided into three sequential stages: initiation, promotion, and progression. Initiation is the first stage, and it is induced by initiator chemical carcinogens. These initiator carcinogens or initiator chemicals can be direct acting or indirect acting. Direct acting, example, alkylating agents. They induce cellular transformation without any metabolic activation. They cause carcinogenesis directly. They don't need any metabolic activation. But the indirect acting initiator carcinogens needs metabolic activation within the body to be able to induce cancer. Example is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. The steps involved here are: number one, that is the first stage, is metabolic activation. That is mostly done in liver. Sometimes the liver can detoxify this also. There is a delicate balance between this activation and detoxification. But when this balance favors activation, metabolic activation occurs, and this leads to the transformation of these chemicals into electron deficient molecules or reactive electrophiles. And these reactive electrophiles, which are electron deficient, attach to electron rich portions of other molecules like DNA, and they cause damage to the DNA. If this DNA damage is not repaired, and this cell with altered DNA undergoes cell division and at least one cycle of proliferation occurs, then this damage becomes permanent. That is, if this DNA damage is carried on to the next generation, it becomes permanent, and such a cell is called initiated cell. But again, even this initiated cell by itself cannot develop into a cancerous growth. It needs something else also, and that is promoter carcinogens. Promoter carcinogens are some chemicals like parbolesters, phenols, hormones, which cause further clonal proliferation of this initiated cell. So remember, in chemical carcinogenesis, two sets of chemicals applied in a definite sequence is necessary to cause cancer. That is, the initiator carcinogens can lead to formation of an initiated cell, but this initiated cell continues proliferation and can transform into cancer only when the promoter carcinogens are applied. These promoter carcinogens by themselves cannot cause cancer, but they cause development of cancer from initiated cell when they are applied subsequent to initiator carcinogens. The third stage is progression, and this is the stage when the mutated proliferated cell shows phenotypic or morphologic features of malignancy. What are the morphologic features of malignancy? We saw that in our last video. Okay, remember that. Now coming to physical carcinogenesis or physical carcinogens. Physical carcinogens are divided into two groups: radiation and non-radiation carcinogens. In a radiation type of carcinogens, the major ones are UV light, ultraviolet light, and ionizing radiations. This radiation carcinogenesis has a long latency. That is, carcinoma develops after a pretty long period after exposure. That is, sometimes 10 or 20 years later. Coming to ultraviolet light, the source of ultraviolet light, the major source is sunlight, and others include UV lamps, welder's arcs, etc. But the point here is UV light can penetrate the body for only a few millimeters. It penetrates only up to the skin level. So its effect is limited to the epidermis, and also its effect is dependent upon the presence and amount of melanin. Melanin protects the epidermis from the harmful effects of UV rays. So this tumor due to ultraviolet light is prevalent more in fair skin. So for people like us in tropical countries where we get abundant of sunlight, this dark skin is a boon. It prevents the harmful effects of ultraviolet light and thereby protects us from cancer. And the mechanism of carcinogenesis is by formation of pyrimidine dimers in DNA. And now coming to ionizing radiations, ionizing radiation of any kind, X-rays, alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, any ionizing radiation can cause cancer. The likelihood or risk is dependent upon the linear energy transfer. Any radiation with a higher LET, that is linear energy transfer, has a higher risk of causing cancer. Example of high LET radiations are neutrons, alpha rays, etc. X-rays have a lower LET and so they are relatively safe. That's why we use them in diagnostic procedures. And here in this field there is an active debate going on. the effect of electromagnetic radiation, which is another type of radiation, the ones which is generated from structures like cell phone towers. As of now, there is no conclusive evidence, yet it is an active debate whether electromagnetic radiation causes cancer or not. The mechanism here is either direct alteration of cellular DNA or removal of ions from water, which causes production of reactive electrophiles, which in turn cause damage to DNA. Coming to non-radiation physical carcinogens, it is rare and mostly related to trauma, like for example stones in gallbladder or healed scars transforming into cancer, etc. Coming to biological carcinogenesis or biologic carcinogens, which is another major category. Even though there are examples of tumor caused by parasites, fungus, bacteria, also the chief agents, biologic agents, which cause cancer in humans are viruses. The transmission of these viral carcinogens can be horizontal or vertical. Horizontal is transmission from one person to another through contact or something else. Vertical transmission is transmission from mother to child or from parents to offspring. So transmission can take both horizontal or vertical route. Mostly the first infection by the virus, that is primary viral infection, is taken care of and cleared by the body's immunity system, either general or specific immune response. But sometimes there is persistent or latent infection when some of these viruses acquire mutations which leave them resistant to the immune attack. The viral agents causing cancer in humans is broadly classified into two groups, the DNA viruses and RNA viruses. Both these types usually have three sets of genes: GAG gene, which codes for the viral antigen, POL gene, which codes for the polymerase enzyme, and ENV gene, which codes for the envelope proteins. Usually, both the types of viruses have these three sets of genes. Now, looking at DNA viral oncogenesis in a little bit more detail, the host cell infected by the DNA oncogenic virus may have one of the following two results. Either the virus can replicate within the host cell and later on released with consequent lysis of the infected host cell. This is called a replication, and the second result is integration. Integration is the viral DNA integrating into the host cell DNA, and this integration can result in mutation. Obviously, when extraneous DNA material is integrated into the original DNA material, then that original DNA material is changed or mutated. Yes. So this integration of viral DNA into the host DNA can lead to mutation, and this can result in cancer. Examples of DNA oncogenic viruses include HPV, human papilloma virus, or EBV, Epstein-Barr virus. Now coming to mode of RNA viral oncogenesis, these RNA viruses or retroviruses contain two identical strands of RNA and the enzyme reverse transcriptase. With the help of these reverse transcriptase, keeping their RNA as template, they synthesize a single strand of matching DNA. This single strand of DNA is then duplicated to form double strand by another enzyme, that is DNA synthetase. And this double-stranded viral DNA sequence is inserted into the host DNA, leading to integration and mutation. Replication begins after integration. The viral particles are produced, assembled into complete viruses, and these are released with consequent lysis of the host cell. You must have learned the mechanism of AIDS previously. Yes, The mechanism is similar. The example of RNA oncogenic virus in humans is HTLV, human T cell lymphotrophic virus. HTLV 1, 2, 3, 4, these ones. Coming to clinical aspects of neoplasia, here you should see two things. One, the response of the host to this tumor, that is tumor immunology, and the effect of this tumor on the host. First, talking about tumor immunology, the body's immune system can recognize tumor cells as foreign cells, just like any foreign bacteria or virus, and they mount an immune attack against it. And this recognition is due to the presence of tumor antigens, which are antigens expressed by tumor cells. There are two types of tumor antigens, specific and associated. Specific or antigens which are unique or specific to that particular tumor, and associated antigens are ones present on tumor cells generally. Anyways, these tumor antigens are recognized and an immune attack is started. This anti-tumor immune response is mainly cell mediated, mostly by cytotoxic T cells, natural killer cells, these kind of cells. Anyways, in spite of this immune attack, most of the cancers grow. This is due to a deranged controlling mechanism of this immunity. Here, you should also talk about cancer immunotherapy. It is an actively researched field. Cancer immunotherapy is using the body's immune system to target cancer cells. This can be non-specific stimulation, that is stimulating the immune system in general, which has only very slight effect, or it can be specific stimulation against the specific type of cancer. But anyways, the desired results are not yet achieved. The field is actively being researched, but as of now, the results are not that satisfactory. Now coming to the effect of tumor on host. So what does this tumor do to the host? The effect of tumor can be local or systemic. The local effect depends upon the site. It can lead to compression, obstruction, tissue destruction, or secondary changes like infarction, ulceration, hemorrhage, etc. Coming to systemic effects, tumor causes cancer cachexia. Cancer cachexia is asthenia, that is emaciation, and anorexia, that is loss of appetite. These occur combined together in cancer, and this is called cancer cachexia. It is depicted here in the picture. The tumor cells can sometimes elaborate pyrogens, and this can lead to fever. The third systemic effect is tumor lysis syndrome. The extensive destruction of large number of rapidly proliferating tumor cells leads to a renal syndrome called tumor lysis syndrome. This syndrome is characterized by hyperuricemia, hyperkalemia, hyperphosphatemia, hypocalcemia, and this can end in renal failure. Another systemic effect is paraneoplastic syndrome. These are the name given to a set of conditions which are neither explained by direct or distant spread of tumor or by the effect of elaborated hormones. Paraneoplastic syndrome comprises a varied group of symptoms like endocrine syndrome, including hypercalcemia, Cushing's syndrome, etc., neuromuscular syndromes like myasthenia gravis, osseous joint and soft tissue conditions like hypertrophic osteoarthropathy, hematologic syndromes like thrombophlebitis, gastrointestinal syndromes like malabsorption, renal syndromes like nephrotic syndrome, cutaneous syndromes like acanthosis nigrans, amyloidosis, all these. A detailed table is there in the textbook by Harsh Mohan. You can see that. Now moving on to the next section, that is pathologic or laboratory diagnosis of cancer. Cancer can be diagnosed by various pathologic methods. These include histological methods like paraffin embedding, where 10% formalin is used to fix the tissue and then it is embedded in molten paraffin wax for making tissue blocks, and then it is fine sectioned with the help of rotary microtome, and this section is usually stained with hematoxylin and eosin. Another histologic method is frozen section. Here unfixed tissue is used, and this procedure has the advantage of being able to be carried out during the surgery. That is, as the patient is undergoing surgery, side by side this study can be done. Here unfixed tissue is used and a machine called cryostat machine is used to freeze the tissue to about minus 25 degrees Celsius, and it is then sectioned. The staining used here is rapid HND or toluidine blue. And this method is very helpful in knowing the extent of presence of cancer in the surgical margin, whether further resection is needed or the extent of surgery is enough. The decision can be made with the help of this method. Coming to cytologic methods, exfoliative cytology is used. This is study of shed off or exfoliated cells, or fine needle aspiration cytology, FNAC, can be done. In FNAC, a fine needle is introduced and a vacuum into the tissue and cells are aspirated. If the mass is superficial, it can be done under direct vision, or if the lesion is deep-seated, then ultrasound or CT guided fine needle aspiration can be done. Histochemistry and cytochemistry refers to identifying the chemical composition of the cells, their constituents or products. Advanced method like immunohistochemistry has high degree of objectivity, specificity and reproducibility. Cell components called antigens combine with specific antibodies, and this complex of antigen antibody is made visible with the help of certain dyes. This method is referred to as immunohistochemistry. It is very useful in identifying tumors of uncertain histogenesis, that is tumors which for which there is a doubt about the parent tissue of origin, or in identifying the presence or absence of certain prognostic markers. Apart from this, electron microscopy and biochemical assay of tumor markers is also used. Coming to modern diagnostic aids, one is flow cytometry. Here, single cell suspensions are required to flow through the cytometer, and it can be employed on mostly blood cells or bone marrow aspirate. Another modern technique is in situ hybridization. In this technique, it is a molecular technique by which nucleic acid sequences can be localized by specifically labeled nucleic acid probes, and this is done in intact cell, that is in situ. Here fluorescent dyes can also be used, then it is called fluorescent in situ hybridization. It is just lighting up a specific nucleic acid sequence with the help of nucleic acid probes or fluorescent dyes in an intact cell. Another modern method is cell proliferation analysis. Here, the degree of proliferation of cells in tumors is determined by various methods like mitotic counts, radioautography, where the proliferating cells are labeled in vitro with thymidine, and these thymidine labeled cells are counted, or microspectrophotometric analysis, where the DNA is stained and the DNA content is measured, or IHC proliferation markers, that is immunohistochemistry proliferation markers, or nucleolar organizer region. These NORs, nucleolar organizer regions, have affinity for silver, and so the silver staining is used here. Other modern aids include image analyzer and morphometry, molecular diagnostic techniques like PCR, polymerase chain reaction. Recently, we are hearing this term a lot, RT-PCR, which is the test for COVID-19. And another modern method is DNA microarray analysis of tumors. I will not go into further detail here. This is more than enough. We will wind up this chapter here. And I think with this video, I have covered most important topics of general pathology. We will start some other section in our next video. As usual, I have provided PDF notes. You can download that. And for more videos, don't forget to keep the channel subscribed. Until we meet in another video, thanks for watching.